Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the Financial Advisors Workshop. And this is the show where we talk to some of the best financial advisors in America. And we learn together by talking about what we do in the business. And today we've got Rob Hoxton, and Rob is a really interesting story. He's a financial planner, built a great business, and then made some changes. And we want to hear about all that and how that all came about. So, welcome to the Financial Advisors Workshop, Mr. Hoxton.
Thanks, Brian. It's great to be with you.
All right. Well, great to have you. And we had a really nice conversation at the beginning, just talking about what you are doing and how you're doing it. So, Rob, could you tell us how you started your career and that led up to a sale and then a buyback and some interesting things? But tell us where this all began.
Man, it's been a long and winding road.
Yeah.
I guess it really started in college when I was in school. I was I'm from West Virginia, live in West Virginia, and I spent my summers in college working down in the coal fields for the church. I thought I was going to go to seminary and be a minister, and um, yeah, as soon as I really started exploring that, I realized that wasn't what I was supposed to do, and I fell into financial planning because what I learned is at the core of so many people's happiness is how they interact with money. So that's kind of how I got interested in financial planning. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey. You know, way back then, financial planning was something you studied, sort of as a correspondence course. You'd get the books in the mail and you'd study, and then you'd go sit in some high school auditorium and take an exam. And uh, it's much more sophisticated now for sure.
Yes. And how long have you done this before you originally sold your practice and all the changes happened?
So let's see, I started the business in July of 92, and then we merged up with a larger firm, not a huge firm, but a larger firm in April of 2016.
Hmm.
So whatever that adds up to,
Okay.
26 years, maybe 20,
Okay.
24
Okay.
years.
Wow. That's a bit. All right. So you built the business up. So how you made a change a number of years ago. Before you did, which is a critical part of your story, how big was your firm? And tell us about the nature of the firm at that time.
So we were a small firm in West Virginia. We had I think we had maybe 325 million in assets under management and about 300 clients. Um, Half the revenue was came from institutional type business, whether they be nonprofits, pension plans. We did a bunch of bank pension plans in West Virginia, 401ks, and then the other half was mom and pops, just helping them do financial planning and manage their affairs. Um, and early on, it was if you had an account balance and a pulse, we were open for business.
Okay. So you weren't big on high minimums. You were looking to work with folks of all types.
Yeah, we didn't have minimums during that 24-year period.
Okay. So in that 24-year period, you built up a great business, but then something changed and you decided to make a sale. Let's hear about all that because that's really an interesting part of where you are now.
Well, the thinking behind that was maybe it was flawed at the time. I didn't realize it, but I had in the 3 or 4 years leading up to the decision to merge with a larger firm, I was serving on the Financial Planning Association's national board, and we kept getting this great research from places like Boston Consulting, and that told us that there was this massive fee compression coming, and being able to be competitive as a small firm was going to get much more difficult. And so, with that in mind, I began to think maybe we should team up with a larger organization and see if we can mitigate some of that risk. Also felt like it was maybe time to take a little bit of risk off the table and get some monetize the business a bit. So I did that. Um, I've since come to find that really there has been fee compression, but it hasn't applied universally across our profession. It really depends on the services that you're providing, I think. Um, and so I I found a larger firm that I had some synergy with. I really enjoyed being part of that firm. The firm was owned in part by private equity firms, and the day came where they wanted to be paid, and so we were sold, and then things really changed.
Well, so what firm was that?
It was United Capital.
Okay.
Yep. Great guy, Joe Duran started this company, and he just had so much energy, and we could all see his vision. But the reality of the private equity stuff, I don't know all the thinking behind the decision to sell, but that's what ended up happening.
Okay. So then you were part of United Capital for a period of time, but now that's all changed. And so what happened? And where how do you position it all right now?
Yeah, so United Capital was sold to a big wirehouse, and as this is all happening, my son is at Texas Tech in their master's program for financial planning, um, and doing really well. Really interested in being in business with his old man, and of course, I was as proud as the day as you could be of that. Um, and and he left Texas Tech and went to work as an advisor at Vanguard, and had a great experience there. And you know, big businesses have limitations on what family members can do within the organization, and so I knew that if we were going to work together, I would need to go to the big warehouse and say, look, can we work something out? Can I buy part of the business back and reestablish? And to their credit, they worked with me on that.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, okay. So then you worked with them, and then now that's all changed. And what does it look like now? And how did we get here?
Yeah. So after, we had to work through that transition and, set up as an independent firm again. And, for the first time in my business life, go into debt to buy the part of the business back.
Mhm.
So we went from being a much larger office to a much smaller office. We left the institutional business behind and really limited the scope of what we do to just individuals and families and financial planning and helping them to manage their assets. Um, and um, and then a year and a half after we kind of got up and running, my son joined me, um, and we've just been growing like crazy. We've basically doubled in size in 2.5 years. So, and then we recently brought on another small advisor business, and so he's sort of learning the Hoxton planning and management way of doing things and doing a great job. So it's a lot of fun. I wouldn't have thought that late in my career I would be so energized and excited about the business, but it has been a lot of fun.
Nice. So, and your strategy is to grow more organically, so that one acquisition is more of a opportunity, but it's not really a strategy going forward.
Yeah, I mean, adding this additional advisor that was an acquisition, but that's not really our strategy. Organic growth hasn't really been a challenge for us per se. And organic growth is so much less expensive than acquisition. So yeah, I think we'll continue to just focus on the three areas where we feel like we can push the accelerator and grow the business.
Exactly. Well, good. And working with your son has got to be a great thing to do. So, congratulations on that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's not always the case. Not always father sons don't always work well together. But I'm pretty humble working with him. He's a lot smarter than I am, and certainly better looking.
well, that's awesome. Well, good. All right. So you mentioned that you've done some media activity, that a good new thing, and it's turning out really well. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so to my son is Archie Hoxton, and to his credit, he was able to convince, this I'm an analog kind of guy, being, where I am in life, and so he convinced me that we ought to have a YouTube channel. and, put it on the various podcasting channels as well. So we created about a year and a half ago a, a a show called Last Paycheck. One of the things that people as they're preparing for retirement are always worried about is what's it going to be like when I get that last paycheck. There's a lot of angst around that. We've helped hundreds of families transition through retirement over the years. So we thought, what a great name. And it's hard to come up with a unique name for a podcast anymore because there's so many of them have been taken, and that one wasn't. So we grabbed it. So it's called The Last Paycheck. It's a 15-minute weekly that drops at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays. And then every day we have like a 1 minute short where we try to, gin up some interest. And we're adding about 100 subscribers per week. We're at about 2,100 at this point. And we're,
How do you find subscribers? Like, do people just know? I mean, are you on networks, or they see, hey, this pops up and these Hoxton people who want to talk to me, or how does that work?
yeah, I mean, that's a big mystery to me. Now we did hire a production company to do it for us.
Okay.
And it's called Through the Noise. They're great. And they have some Google people in the bowels of their business that work the algorithms. But we have people that have subscribed from all over the place. You can see a lot of what's going on and who's watching and how long they're watching. Initially, we were huge in India. So we had a ton of viewers that
Right.
were from India. Of course, we're not going to do business in India, but so we had to tighten it down a little bit. We didn't really need to be visible in India. So really our objective was to be visible primarily within about a 30-mile radius. And we live in the country. We're in West Virginia, about 60 miles northwest of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So we're sort of like the outer edge of the suburbs. And so we really wanted to just kind of 30-mile radius. We wanted to be popping up in people's YouTube subscription or around Google. And so they've really been able to sort of fashion that for us pretty well.
Nice. Is that near Harper's Ferry, that nice little community, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we're in Shepherdstown, which is the oldest town in West Virginia, and it's about 8 miles from Harper's Ferry.
So you're in that neighborhood. That's a beautiful territory. Wonderful. And I
Yeah.
know 304 area code. So that, but it said Washington,
Uh-huh.
knew it was West Virginia. Or they sometimes say West by God, Virginia.
That's right.
Right. So great.
It's we like to say it's the best Virginia.
West Virginia. There we are. Okay. Well, good. So sorry. So now you do financial planning, and tell us about the show a little bit more. Like what do you say, and what do you do, and how do you attract people, and how does that play out?
Yeah, so the show we come up with topics that are either we try to do mostly sort of evergreen topics that aren't tied to some sort of an event. So we don't really want to be talking about the election, for instance. But so it'll be something like how can you maximize your lifetime portfolio value through Roth conversions or something like that. Or it'll be, how can you find ways to reduce spending that you're not aware is happening, create more friction in your financial life, just little tips like that. It's only 15 minutes per week. So it's got to be pretty condensed and focused on a particular topic. Sometimes we'll see some sort of ridiculous pitch on social media about whatever the financial strategy of the day happens to be, and you've got some influencer that's making really outlandish promises. So we'll put them on and we'll react to their content, and that tends to be really popular because it kind of has a gossip component to it. It makes me a little uncomfortable, but it draws viewers. And then just trying to be during this time of year, we have like we just aired 3 episodes on, what to do about your Medicare open enrollment.
Excellent.
So it's boring to about 90% of the population, but the people who are really dealing with that right now want to see it. So
Okay, so they all see it. Then how do they become clients then? How does that work?
so we have we just on the screen where we just say, and we say it in the at the end in the outro. If you have specific questions that you want some help with, give us a call or send us a text message. And in our business, we have to capture all the text messages, so we use a service for that. But and so people will just reach out, and sometimes they'll ask questions or make comments in the comments section.
Okay.
Sometimes the comments are kind of a little bit obnoxious, but sometimes they're genuine people reaching out and wanting some advice. And you have to be a somewhat focused on education. You want to make a difference for people who aren't paying you, right? But after a while, people will start to reach out and ask for appointments, um, and that's where things get interesting. I have a great friend who out in the South Bend area that has a very successful, and we copied the idea from him, a very successful show. I think they have 55,000 subscribers, and they added something north of 100 million in assets last year just from just from the podcast.
From the show. And how have you done it since you've been doing this podcast?
So we've just recently started adding, but I don't know the numbers yet, but we're starting to get shots on goal, right? Which is the first thing. And we were told my friend didn't really have a lot of traction until about 6 years in, and we're a year and a half and starting to get some. So we're pretty hopeful.
That's great. Now you say you've doubled since you took the business back a year, what, 2.5 years ago. And so if you haven't doubled from the internet work, how has that doubled?
Well, I mean, to be sure, a big part of it is the lift we've gotten from the market. But when we bought the business back, it was April Fool's Day of 2022, and of course, the market,
The market
you
low,
know, yeah,
right?
it was headed lower at that point, and we were getting a little sweaty around the collar, so to speak. But um, so we have benefited just from market appreciation, of course, like everyone in the business has recently. Um, and then just word of mouth. We work our centers of influence, which haven't changed much over the years, even
Yep.
though we went from one firm to the next. Client referrals, we've purposely not solicited, even though our solicitation limit, non-solicit clause has expired. Now we have purposely not solicited clients that we left behind, because they're managed by a dear friend of mine who was my partner before we left. And so we haven't grown because of that. We could probably double again if we did that. But so we've really been very much hands off there. Um, but there's been a lot of excitement around the fact that we have a couple of younger advisors and that are doing really great work. So
Good. So the growth since you bought back at a very timely time, I would say, has been mostly kind of traditional. Kind of working the networks and working the referrals and everything. But now you have this new growth arm, and it's going to really help develop, which sounds like really like a lot of fun.
yeah, so it's just been client referrals,
Yeah.
CPAs and attorneys, and then the podcast. Where we've gotten the greatest benefit at this point from the podcast has been, our clients have been sharing it with their friends who are interested in finding either a financial advisor for the first time or a new one. And so that's been a real surprise, is because it they can get a feel for who we are by watching a couple of episodes. They can see that we know what we're talking about. We're not just hacks. We are actually financial planners. And so that's made it really easy for them to hire us. So we've imposed a minimum now because we have to be pretty selective about our intake.
Good. So, okay, so then you bring folks in based on some conversations that you've had, obviously traditional referrals, and you do a full financial plan. And then how do you design a portfolio for them? Are you traditional 60/40 type portfolios, or do you change, the equity components? Do you add alternatives in? How does that all work? How do you design an investor's life?
So one of the differences between how the firm operates now and how the firm operated when we were independent before. When we were independent before, we had a really sharp young guy, who's the CFA, who would build build our portfolios for us. We had portfolio strategies that were some of them were tactical, and so we would be making tilts based upon what was happening in the market and what was happening in the economy. I don't feel we did a very good job with. So now, we don't have that kind of person on staff. We leverage a couple of other organizations to help us, but our investment approach is just really straightforward, and easy for prospective clients to understand. It's basically this: we build portfolios that tend to be global in nature. That the recommendation is driven by the financial plan, i.e., the amount of risk they need to take is driven by what types of results they need long term. And then we invest the money so that in the most efficient asset classes, we're not using active management to save money. In the less efficient asset classes, we'll use active managers, we'll use alternatives, and then we try to put a tax overlay on the taxable accounts. And that's where we get a little bit of alpha, but that's it. Boom. So
Boom. And how do you do alternative?
we're just using um, we're using funds. Some of them are, gated funds that have some liquidity, some reduced liquidity. Oftentimes they're just 40 Act mutual funds.
Okay. But you get better returns, and there's some liquidity that you get better returns, that kind of thing, interval funds, things like that.
Interval funds. Yeah, I don't know. It's it's only been 2 years that we've been doing it. I've read the research that it makes sense as a diversifier. Um, but in the last few years, if everything that's good that's happened in the market has been in the S&P 500, right? So it's really the diversifying effect of that has been a negative, frankly,
In the short run, right?
in the short run. Yeah. So, but more a financial planner than I am an investment manager, I would say.
Okay. Well, and that'll play out over time, and that should actually play to your advantage. Well, good.
Yeah.
So where do you see the business going now from here? Now that we've got quite an interesting framework for the repurchase,
Mhm.
new marketing, what does it look like going forward?
So as far as our business is concerned, it is, it's to be, we're almost at 500 million in assets under management and about 360 households.
Mhm.
Um, the I think that in the next 5 years, we should be able to hit that $1 billion mark. And we'll continue to add advisors. I prefer to add young, inexperienced people who have a lot of potential and then develop them. That way, any bad habits they have are our bad habits. And then, so that's a slow growth approach.
Mhm.
I don't think we'll do any sort of acquisition type stuff. I know that's what everybody's doing right now. I just see a lot of risk and expense associated with that. And then I'll be 60 in February, and I don't have any plans to retire, but I know how that goes. You don't always get to call the shots on that. So we're actively engaged in developing the leadership for the next generation. So and we get coaching from a program called EOS, which is Entrepreneurial Operating System, which has been fantastic, um, to help us to envision what the future might look like and how we get from here to there. So yeah.
Great. And then what about our industry? We've seen all this consolidation going on, companies buying companies and selling companies and all that. What do you see going on in our industry? Do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, it is. It seems like it seems like 1999, and the party is raging. And the multiples that firms are being paid for joining up and leveraging private equity are uh, really attractive. Um,
Mhm.
but having been through that and the soul sucking experience that can be, I'm not saying that it always is, because for me it wasn't initially, and then it became more so afterward after another transaction. Um, I have to think that there's a certain part of our profession that won't want that. And I think there's an argument to be made for, from a business standpoint, bigger is better. Um, but one of my clients said when we became part of a larger firm, they said, Rob, we've worked together for 20 couple years, and you have always sold against the big firm, and now you are the big firm. And I realized that all of the people that hired us and had confidence in us they hired us because they didn't want the big firm. And after we became a small firm again, I can't tell you the number of people that have come and said, I don't know if you were having a midlife crisis or if you'd had a moment of insanity, but we sure are glad that you're back to being a small firm. So,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? So I think that there's a place for everyone, but there are definitely some forces there in play. The technology that we have available to us, though, makes it much easier to compete. We have these technology stacks are amazing, whereas they weren't so much 8 or 10 years ago.
Yes. So you've had such great success. You made a change, went to the big firm, redid that whole thing, and now you got a whole new lease on life, and you're becoming a huge success again. 500 million is a great practice. So if you could, we're coming to the end of our discussion today. I just wondered if you could share with our other brethren in the industry, what would you say is one of the keys to your success that you could offer to the folks that are out there who are trying to make it in the industry?
I think the key I don't really know, but I've had a couple of really great experiences throughout my career that have shaped me. One of them was I was told by an much older planner who's no longer with us to invest in coaching. And so my first coach was a guy named Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach. He operates in your neck of the woods, I think, Chicago area, and so that's been like 26 years. I met three other guys that continue to be in a study group with in that program. I did it for 4 years. I had to fib about my earnings in order to get into the program. Um, I I think I think that happens pretty frequently, so I don't feel so guilty anymore for telling a lie. But you know, he had this exercise where it was, close your eyes and think about what you've accomplished in the last 5 years, and then look at the next five. And he called it the 10-time mind expander. And so what it did is it opened up this view that so much is possible if you'll only let your mind go there. And it's been true. And this business is amazing. It's got to be the best business that there is.
Nice. No, I agree. I agree. Well, so coaching is a key, and just keep you focused and keep you focused on building something, so you have someone else kind of keeping you in check in a way.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, which is great. Awesome. Well, great. Well, thank you. This has been a great interview. You have a great practice. You're a great example of the leadership in our industry. So we're looking forward to the next chapter. First chapter has been great. Let's see the second chapter, and maybe there's a third too. We'll see how it goes.
We'll
So,
see.
all right. Well, thank you.
Brian, it's been fun. It's always fun to talk about yourself. Thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you the best.
Thanks for being with us today on the Financial Advisors Workshop. Thank you, Rob.